idea that Trump and my Republican colleagues want to restore integrity and security in the visa process is actually a joke. Let me be clear, integrity is not snatching lawful visa holders off the streets and throwing them into unmarked vans. Let me remind y'all that Melania, the First Lady, a model, and when I say model, I'm not talking about Tyra Banks, Cindy Crawford, or Naomi Campbell level, applied for and was given an EB-1 visa. The First Lady had none of those accolades under her belt. It doesn't take an Einstein to see that the math ain't mathin' here.
Jasmine Crockett calmly asked a question. Then came a $137,000 flower scandal, Melania Trump's furious meltdown, and even a desperate 911 call from Barron Trump. This unraveling of drama is loaded with hypocrisy, secret visas, and the Trump camp scrambling to silence one explosive truth. Imagine spending $137,000 on flowers. Not wedding flowers, not for a royal garden, but for the White House during Melania Trump's tenure as First Lady. Now, imagine that extravagant bill being dissected on live TV in a way that leaves you scrambling for excuses. That's exactly what Jasmine Crockett achieved. And let's just say the fallout wasn't exactly rosy for the Trump family. It all started when Crockett, known for her precise and uncompromising style, brought up the staggering bill during her questioning. Calm, collected, and seemingly unbothered by potential backlash, she asked a simple yet devastating question. Why were taxpayer dollars being used for such frivolous expenditures? Her delivery wasn't aggressive. It didn't need to be. Facts, as they say, speak louder than any insult. And here they practically shouted.
Last time I checked, there's a lot of people that are actually being grabbed as they are going in for their appointments. In fact, we know that one of the candidates that was recently running in this mayoral, he ended up being arrested because he decided that he was actually going to escort people that are actually showing up to their meetings. You are using a paintbrush to paint an entire group of people where the vast majority of them are coming here because they are actually seeking a better life. Somehow we continue to cherry pick and talk about one criminal act and another criminal act, and it is so very interesting to me that, yes, we will say people are xenophobic.
Crockett's laser-focused approach sliced right through the facade of opulence the Trump family is so well known for. Turns out, behind the gold-plated elevator doors and perfectly composed Instagram shots lurked some very questionable spending decisions. If $137,000 sounds like monopoly money to you, think again. Take a moment to picture what that amount could cover for the average person. That's a one-year salary for 3 teachers. It's just enough to pay off a decent college loan. For most families, it could mean owning a home or escaping years of crushing debt. Instead, it was spent on flowers, to decorate spaces you likely only saw in short news clips or maybe an overproduced Christmas tour video. It wasn't just about the flowers, it was about accountability. A recurring theme in the Trump administration was its tendency to brush aside transparency in favor of lavishness, and somehow, $137,000 worth of flowers became the perfect symbol for their priorities, or lack thereof. The issue wasn't just the flowers, it was the frustration beneath them. The Trump family constantly painted themselves as champions of middle-class Americans while living like royalty. And yet, here was a glaring example of taxpayer money being flung towards something so disconnected from the lives of the people footing the bill. Lemonade stands, bake sales, or even years of scrimping and saving wouldn't come close to covering a single bougie arrangement on Melania's watch.
Nevertheless, what Republicans are doing with this reconciliation process, the travel bans and revoking visas jeopardizes our national security. It threatens our communities, our higher education, and our economy. Visas to individuals on J or M visas typically improve or impair our economy.
They generally improve the economy, and I can give a brief example. My wife is a very successful woman. She makes a ton of money, which I'm grateful for.
Because when you start to decide that just because somebody came from another country, they are automatically some kind of criminal, that does sound kind of xenophobic to me.
The spending habits of the former First Lady highlighted what many saw as a double standard. Preach fiscal conservatism on one hand while splurging on luxurious aesthetics with the other. Crockett's approach stood out because it wasn't your typical political grandstanding. She didn't need to scream hypocrisy from the rooftops. She didn't make it personal. The facts alone were enough, and she simply let them sit there, heavy and uncomfortable. While many might have gone for a flashy zinger or hyperbole, Crockett trusted that the sheer absurdity of a 6-figure flower bill would speak for itself. It was less of an attack and more of a reality check for anyone paying attention. Melania Trump, however, reportedly didn't find Crockett's line of questioning nearly as composed. In fact, according to insiders, she was livid. And who could blame her? The whole point of Melania's public persona was effortless grace, an almost regal detachment from the messy chaos of politics. But now, that carefully crafted image came with a hefty floral price tag stapled onto it, and people were starting to notice. What's worse, Crockett's questioning didn't just put Melania's spending into the spotlight. It cracked open a larger issue of privilege and excess within the entire Trump camp, one that seemed to mock the average American's financial reality. As the backlash mounted, Melania's fury wasn't enough to contain the damage. Reports suggest tensions within the Trump family began brewing almost immediately after the flower bill scandal hit the public. The carefully orchestrated image of a unified, untouchable dynasty was starting to unravel, petal by petal. Perhaps what stung the most for Melania wasn't just the exposure of her whimsical spending, but the fact that it forced people to look at the broader implications of Trump-era antics. Crockett's question wasn't just about one floral budget, but about the unchecked privileges that defined the administration. And what did all this transparency do? Well, it turned the Trumps defensive. Sources claim that Melania labeled the revelations as unfair scrutiny, while others close to the family tried redirecting the narrative. But as anyone could predict, it didn't work. For a public that had grown weary of smoke and mirrors, these revelations were a breath of fresh, albeit expensive, air. If Jasmine Crockett had set out to gain attention for her questioning, she nailed it. But what she really accomplished was something bigger. She exposed an entire system of self-indulgence that the Trumps had seemed to effortlessly maintain for years. Of course, the drama didn't end here. As if the flowers weren't bad enough, things took an absurd and unexpected turn. Enter Barron Trump, a familiar yet quiet figure in the family, and a bizarre 911 call fueled by this spiraling scandal. Whatever composure the Trumps had left, well, it was about to go up in smoke. Just when you thought the $137,000 flower scandal couldn't get messier, Barron Trump entered the scene, and things took an unexpected turn, via a 911 call, no less. Yes, the same Barron Trump who rarely makes headlines somehow managed to add an entirely new layer of chaos to an already bizarre story. The youngest Trump reportedly dialed law enforcement, leaving everyone asking the same question: why? Public response quickly shifted from confusion to outright mockery. Was this a childish overreaction or a calculated attempt to change the narrative? Either way, it didn't work. The whole thing only served to magnify the issue Crockett brought up in the first place: privilege. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, things weren't any calmer. According to reports, Donald Trump tried to keep things light by calling Barron the hottest one out there. A strange, almost nonsensical comment, sure, but pure Trump energy nonetheless. Melania, however, was reportedly furious, not with Barron, but with her own team for letting things spiral so out of control. Her focus wasn't on the flower bill itself, but on losing control of her squeaky clean image. It's worth noting how this incident fits into a much larger trend. The Trump family has repeatedly shown resistance to oversight and criticism, especially when it challenges the larger-than-life image they've built around themselves. Questions about financial spending aren't new in politics, but the Trumps have a knack for turning every molehill of accountability into a mountain of controversy. Barron's 911 call wasn't just another misstep. It felt like a frantic scramble to protect the family's brand, even at the expense of common sense. And then there's the unintended result. Instead of steering attention away from Jasmine Crockett's questions, the call did the exact opposite, amplifying them. By dragging law enforcement into a story about financial transparency, it shifted focus back to the very thing Melania likely wanted to bury. Crockett's calm, evidence-based approach stood in even starker contrast to the Trump family's chaotic response. Essentially, they handed her the win without her having to break a sweat. Looking back, this whole sequence of events, from flowers to emergency calls, exposed just how tightly the Trumps cling to control and how quickly they fall apart when accountability enters the conversation. But as absurd as the 911 call might seem, it wasn't about flowers, not really. It was about power and who gets to hold it accountable. And in this case, the answer was clear. Transparency was coming out on top, whether the Trumps liked it or not. The $137,000 flower bill wasn't just a ridiculous expense. It was a peek behind the curtain at how much the Trump family fights to avoid accountability. Jasmine Crockett's question hit deeper than the price tag. It confronted a whole system of privilege. And if a flower bill could spark this much chaos, imagine what else is being hidden. Transparency isn't about nitpicking. It's the backbone of democracy. So what exactly are we protecting when we resist it? Crockett proved that facts are sharper than any soundbite, whether it's lavish spending or mysterious visas. Sometimes truth really does it all.